The K, Chapter 12. One morning in the middle of May, I awoke to hear Timothy taking great breaths, sounding as if he were fighting for air. I quietly listened, and then I asked. It took me a moment to figure out what was happening. Timothy had fever and had malaria.
Are you alright, Timothy?
His forehead was burning hot. His breath was coming in big, harsh sighs.
It will go away. Just fetch me some
When I had fever in Virginia and at Charlotte, my mother had given me aspirin and put cold cloths on my head. But there wasn't any aspirin on the island, and the water was always warm. I poured some water from the keg and brought it back to him. For a while afterwards, I listened to his heavy breathing, and eventually decided that putting a damp cloth on his head could only make things better.
Stop.
I crawled back to the keg and wet that piece of cloth with a little water from the keg. I crawled back to Timothy and pressed the rag against his forehead. Even though the morning air was already warm, he suddenly began to shiver. I even heard his teeth clacking.
That'd be good.
It must have been 10 o'clock when Timothy began to mumble and laugh. It sounded like he was talking in his sleep. The strange laughter itself came from in between coughs and wheezes. It was very high and strange. I tried talking to him the entire time, but he seemed not to notice me. He once tried to get up, but fell back down to the mat. I then told him to be still, and for a very long time he was. The cycle started over again, with the shivers, the mumbling, and the high laughter.
What's wrong? Timothy? Timothy? What's wrong, Timothy? What's wrong?
At about noontime, the mumbling got worse, and I could tell he was trying to get to his feet. I tried to get him to lie down again by clinging to his arm and talking to him. He threw me aside like I wasn't there. I heard him crashing down the hill towards the sea, his idiotic laughter echoing back at the hut. I followed the trail of laughter to the beach, where I heard a frantic splashing and knew that he'd gone into the water.
Timothy!
Suddenly, he became stone silent. I screamed his name over and over, but got no answer. I finally managed to make my way down to the beach and waded in the water about to my knees, as to keep in line with the beach. I had gone about 30 steps when I fell over what seemed to be Timothy, plunging into the water. Holding Timothy's body with one hand, I got back up and steadied myself. I could tell that the upper part of his body was floating, but that his feet were dragging on the bottom. I put my ear to his chest. He was still breathing. I worked my way around him and finally got both hands under his shoulders, but he turned out to be too heavy that way. I then tried a different way that made him easier to move. I clasped my hands around his legs and began to pull him out. Well, he did make weird sounds while I was pulling him out. Timothy made no effort to help me. It took what seemed like a long time to get Timothy out of the water and onto the sand. He must have weighed 230 pounds, and I could only move him 2 or 3 inches at a time. I sat beside him for what seemed to be like an hour in the hot sun while he rested, his breathing not as harsh anymore. I then realized he was shivering again. I knew that I could not drag him all the way back up to the hut, so I decided to tear some branches of sea grape off their stems and use them to make shade for Timothy. The leaves cut the ray of the sun getting to his body at At this point, I knew that he needed water, so I found my way back to the hut and got him some water. When I got back to Timothy from the hut, I ordered him to drink the water, and with one hand round his mouth and guided the cup to his lips. He seemed to understand and gulped down the water. I stayed with Timothy for the rest of that long afternoon while he slept. When he awakened, it was evening and had turned cool again. Timothy's breathing was easy now. I could tell that his fever had broken and his forehead was no longer hot.
How did I get down here?
You ran down from the hut screaming and dove into the water.
I helped him to his feet, and we went up the hill together, with Timothy leaning on me for support for the first time. After that, he never really regained
You
his
really
strength.
scared me when you dove into the water. Just ended.
Fire the stew cats!
Are you alright, Timothy? You alright, Timothy?
Lime,
Malar.
Malar.
What the? I am officially Indiana Jones.
Hey, Memo!
Thank you for watching this very important film.